I have a PhD in avoiding feelings and emotions, okay? I have a PhD in stuffing emotions and feelings. And I am telling you, there are consequences. Pain and bitterness and emotional injury that is not transformed in your life will be transferred in your life. It's going to show up. And the analogy that I always use is, it's like having an 800-pound gorilla on you. Most people, so here's another thing. No one leaves their childhood unscathed. Everybody, I don't care if you had a perfect childhood, everybody leaves their childhood with some emotional baggage. Well, guess what? And some of you more than others. And if you stuff or avoid your emotions and feelings and you've never worked through some of these injuries that you had when you were a kid, it starts out a little cute, furry, emotional, a little cute, furry, dysfunctional, emotional monkey that's a little cute little circus monkey. But then the longer that you've stuffed and avoid, the longer you stuff and avoid, and you don't deal with those feelings and emotions, that turns into, again, you do that for 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, and you are now looking at an 800-pound gorilla. That cute little furry monkey, when you stuffed and avoided as a kid, now looks like an 800-pound gorilla. And you wonder why you're having a tough time, a challenging time building your asset, growing a business network, being an entrepreneur, leading, being consistent, not following through, having challenges with your relationships, inside of business, outside of business. That's because you've got an 800-pound emotional gorilla on you that has been built up over the years that you haven't dealt with yet. Welcome to the EQ for Entrepreneurs podcast. Like most business owners, you already know you need good business and marketing strategies to scale and be profitable. But at some point, you've hit the dreaded wall where you feel stuck and frustrated. EQ for Entrepreneurs is for business owners and leaders who are honest enough to admit that they just might be the ones holding their business back and are brave enough to change that.
We're Noble and Kathy, and every week we're having candid conversations about all things emotional intelligence and how growing that has allowed us to get out of our own way and is radically transforming both our businesses and our personal lives. This is the secret sauce strategy for modern entrepreneurs who are tired of hustling without seeing results and want to grow a business and a life that they love.
And we pray that this skinny that we're going to share with you guys adds value to you based on where you're at to help you guys reach the next level of your business and your life. So some of the things we're going to cover here is on the concept or topic of emotional maturity. And I'm going to ask you some questions that are along the line of, how is your emotional maturity impacting your life right now? So, I know the concept of emotional intelligence and emotional maturity is not new per se, but it's not super widely known. And so we have been on, for those of you who don't know us, Noble and Kathy, and we have been on this growth journey, emotional growth journey now for a few years. And we've had a number of different businesses. We've had, we've been part of probably close to 10 different startups. And so our emotional maturity or lack thereof has absolutely directly impacted our bottom line.
But the problem is, people don't know that. They don't know, nobody's aware, unless you've had exposure somehow to emotional intelligence. We're not even aware as people that that's our problem. All we do is we see these symptoms, right? It's like a tree that's growing out of control. We think, I have to trim all these branches because that's the problem, right? These branches and all the stuff. It's not the branches. The branches are the symptoms, so to speak. It's the tree itself. It's the trunk. It's the roots. And in our lives, we'll see all these symptoms and we think, I just need to take care of this symptom and take care of this symptom. And man, why is this always happening to me? And without realizing, because we just don't know, we're not taught that, the root of all of that is our emotional intelligence or lack thereof. For most people, it's lack thereof, because we have been able to grow an incredible business But it took us until just a couple years ago to realize, okay, we were not necessarily doing it from the most emotionally healthy place. And had we been able to start that way, had we been able to learn that, it would have created a very different experience for us. So we're just excited to be able to share this with you guys today. And yeah, let's dive into emotional maturity.
Realize that your talent can take you to a place where your character or your emotional intelligence won't sustain you, right? So that's a whole nother dynamic. So you can in one regard, you can outwork your EQ up to a certain point, and then at some point, your emotional maturity or your emotional intelligence absolutely will catch up to you. And I was 100% a people pleaser. I wanted the approval and validation and affirmation of everyone around me. Now, if you would have said, no, but you're a people pleaser back then, I would have said, oh, no, I would have denied it. No, I'm so mature guy. No. For me, I want to go to the next level in business from an emotionally healthy perspective and not an unhealthy emotionally perspective. Because if you outwork your emotional maturity, again, that is absolutely going to show up somewhere in your life, whether it's your family, your marriage, your relationships, your team, that kind of thing. Again, so just don't be fooled to think that just because somebody has a great work ethic that they're emotionally mature. So they could also, there's a lot of people that have accomplished amazing things from unhealthy emotional perspectives. Mm-hmm. And again, for me, that kind of success is temporary at best. So that's some background. I'm going to give you some questions to that are going to be very relevant surrounding emotional maturity. And I've got my notes here, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. So, are you currently living the life that you want to live? Number one, are you currently living the life you want to live? Number two, are you living at your full potential? Are you living at your full potential? Let me give an example. I asked this at one of our conferences. There's 1,000 people at one of our conferences. And I asked a couple questions. I said, hey, how many of y'all have ever received this advice from one of your business coaches? Hey, keep doing what you're doing. Of course, everybody in the room, all 1,000 people just about raised their hand. And then I said, then my next question was, now, how many of you all that have received that advice are operating at and living at your full potential? And there were like 5 people that raised their hand. So I said, no. I said, how many of you guys are living at your full potential, maximizing your potential? 5 hands were raised out of 1,000. I said, so I find it interesting that the advice that we often get and give in business is just work harder, just keep doing what you're doing. Well, clearly something's not working, right? And that delta is your emotional maturity and emotional intelligence. And not just yours on the receiving end, but you on the business coach end, if that's the advice that you continue to give people that are still not reaching their full results, that they're not reaching the results and the potential that they could and should be, right? So it's a function on both sides, the giver and the receiver of that stuff. Next question, are you living at your max capacity? So they're all kind of very similar. So are you currently living the life you want to live? Are you living at your full potential? Are you living at your max capacity? How do you handle stress? How do you handle stress? So on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being you're great at handling stress, 1 being you're terrible at handling stress. How do you feel you are at handling stress? How do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10 you are at handling conflict? How are you at handling conflict? Either as the person trying to resolve the conflict or the person on the receiving end of the resolution of that conflict. How do you feel you are at handling conflict? What makes you upset? What makes you upset? A great quote is, you can tell the size of a person by the size of the things that makes them angry. What things make you angry or upset? Are they really a big deal, or are they teeny things? That could also be a clue into your emotional maturity, emotional intelligence. How long does it take you to forgive someone? How long does it take you to forgive someone? How long does it take you to forgive yourself? It took me, man, probably 5 to 8 years to forgive myself. This is a few years ago. But that was one of the reason I was stuck. I wouldn't forgive myself because of all the, stupid decisions I've made, all the different terrible decisions I've made over my lifetime. So that will keep you stuck. So, so again, how long does it take you to forgive? How long does it take you for you to get over something? How long does it take for you to get over something that bothers you, upsets you? And what is your behavior when you're upset? How do you behave when you're upset? Do you act like a 5-year-old? Do you throw temper tantrums, but you're really 20 or 25 or 30 or 35 or 40, 45? I've seen 60-year-olds with temper tantrums. So again, emotional maturity, emotional intelligence does not matter how old you are. It's the work you've done in this area. Are you being your own true self in relationships, or are you being what others want you to be? Just a business environment, it's very easy to get caught up in, I'm seeing this person being so successful, so clearly that's who I have to be successful also. You need your own boundaries. God didn't make you somebody else. He made you to be you. You're the best version of you, not the second best version of somebody else. Right. So anyway, that's another thing. Are you being your own true self in relationships, or are you trying to be somebody else? Are you the leader that you want to be? Are you the leader that you want to be? Are you the influencer that you want to be? Are you the entrepreneur that you want to be? Are you the husband or father that you want to be? For those of you all that are married, have kids, whatever, are you the wife or mother that you want to be? If not, then I will tell you there is emotional work that needs to be done to live at your full potential. This is not something, listen, and take it from, I have a PhD in avoiding feelings and emotions, okay? I have a PhD in stuffing emotions and feelings. And I am telling you, there are consequences. Pain and bitterness and emotional injury that is not transformed in your life will be transferred in your life. It's going to show up. And the analogy that I always use is, it's like having an 800-pound gorilla on you. Most people, so here's another thing. No one leaves their childhood unscathed. Everybody, I don't care if you had a perfect childhood, everybody leaves their childhood with some emotional baggage. Well, guess what? And some of you more than others. And if you stuff or avoid your emotions and feelings, and you've never worked through some of these injuries that you had when you were a kid, it starts out a little cute, furry, dysfunctional, emotional monkey that's a little cute little circus monkey. But then the longer that you've stuffed and avoid, the longer you stuff and avoid, and you don't deal with those feelings and emotions, that turns into, again, you do that for 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, and you are now looking at an 800-pound gorilla. That cute little furry monkey, when you stuffed and avoided as a kid, now looks like an 800-pound gorilla. And you wonder why you're having a tough time, a challenging time building your asset, growing a business network, being an entrepreneur, leading, being consistent, not following through, having challenges with your relationships inside of business, outside of business. That's because you've got an 800-pound emotional gorilla on you that has been built up over the years that you haven't dealt with yet. And so here's and this is another huge revelation the guy gave me literally just last week. It's tough to believe positive for your life. It's tough to walk by faith. It's tough to believe God's promises when you hate yourself. When you've got that 800-pound gorilla that's choking you out, and you're like, and then everyone is telling you, well, just believe you can, reach whatever goals, that you have for yourself. You just got to believe. And that 800-pound gorilla is just laughing in your ear as he's got, your neck in a choke right there. And the gorilla's laughing at all the people telling you, oh, you just got to believe in yourself. You just got to believe in yourself. Seriously, dude, you know how many times, how many times have you heard that? How's that working for you? just to believe. Oh man, I wish I'd never heard that before. You've heard that. Everyone's heard that 1,000 times. Well, why doesn't it work a bunch of times, right? Because of that 800-pound emotional gorilla that is choking you out from all the years of stuffing and avoiding your feelings and emotions. So that was a huge revelation for me. Now, here's the deal. Why don't most people, in my opinion, face this, deal with this stuff, work on this stuff, confront this stuff? Here's a couple things. One is, it's hard, man. Listen, this is not easy peasy lemon squeezy, y'all. This is no joke. It's hard, man. It's hard. It's slow. It takes a long time. It's not sit down, read a book on emotional intelligence, emotional maturity, and woo, you're healed from the things that have happened to you over the years. No, it takes time. It's not sexy. It's not fun. Here's the blessing though. The blessing is, man, on the other side of the grind of emotional work, not of your building a business asset. Again, keep trying to build a massive business with an 800-pound gorilla on you, and let's see how that works out for you. How's it working out for you now, right? And for those of y'all, there's probably someone there like, oh, I'm killing it. No, but you just don't understand. I'm killing it. Let's just see how long it lasts until you work on yourself emotionally, right? One of the other things I love saying is roots before fruits. Now, I'm not saying necessarily you can't do one before the other, or you can't do one without the other. Because again, we said you can get the fruits, but again, in my opinion, that's going to be temporary if you don't get the root work done too. So I would say a little new version of that. I would say roots and fruits, right? So do both. Make sure you're doing both, because if you do the fruit without the root, I'm telling you, you may reach some gangster success, but it's going to be temporary. So my last little piece here, and then I'll turn it over to my awesome wife, is the healing, the forgiveness, the freedom is so worth it. Not having all the triggers that trigger you into the emotional spins and spirals that we experience and stuff. No more being controlled or manipulated in relationships. Having healthy boundaries in your relationships, whether it's personal relationships or business relationships. Having healthy emotional boundaries. Being able to, from a healthy perspective, deal with stress and anxiety from a healthy perspective, without the anxiety and the tension in your body. Because here's the other thing too, y'all, is that this emotional, these emotions and all this whole realm impacts your physiology. It impacts your literally your physical body. So it's so worth it to get healing in these areas. No more mental fog. Some of you are, man, I've been in times of my life, man, just a mental fog, this funk, and getting some healing in these areas can really help give you clarity, blows the fog away, the mental fog. We need clarity is king, confusion kills. Clarity is king, confusion kills. And so some of you are like, man, I can't get my vision. What's my vision? What's my why? Well, that may be a function. If you're having a tough time figuring out what your why is and figuring out your vision and all that stuff, it may be due to some emotional stuff that you've been carrying around that you haven't dealt with yet. So another thing too, being able to live with clarity, confidence, courage, boldness, and authenticity, which are all qualities that are necessary and needed to be a successful entrepreneur, in my opinion, and to build a long-term, right? Because I don't want to build a temporary deal. I want to build a multiple long-term assets and that kind of thing. So, but I want to do that from an emotionally healthy perspective, and not from an emotionally unhealthy perspective. So anyway, just some thoughts for you, and I'm going to turn over to my awesome wife.
Yeah. So just to wrap it up, I made a list, and this is not comprehensive or exhaustive by any means, but it is a list of maybe what is emotional maturity? What does somebody who is emotionally mature look like, right? Because sometimes it's really hard to shoot for something that you don't know, that you don't even have a vision of, a picture of, you can't even imagine. So I'm just going to read through a couple of these things here and just see. Let's just get a picture of what this could look like. So number one, they're self-aware. Okay, so emotionally, I would say it's probably one of the places that emotional intelligence starts. It's with being self-aware, defining your own reality, right? Defining who you are as a person. So somebody who's self-aware is able to see and accept themselves and the circumstances around them as they are, not trying to make it something that it's not. Okay, so people tend to do this. They tend to look at themselves, but they don't see themselves clearly. Sometimes they'll see themselves worse. Oh, I'm just this terrible, horrible person. Or sometimes they will overinflate who they actually are. And in their mind, they have this inflated view of themselves. Same thing with the circumstances around them, right? So it's being able to not just gloss over everything and say, everything's wonderful when the house is falling apart, right? It's being able to say, okay, no, let's just look at things really in reality and just see them for how they are. Because when one of the things that my mom told me growing up was, with acceptance comes peace. So when you see things and define them as they really are, now you can accept them. And now you have peace. And now you're operating from a place of peace. Doesn't mean you need to leave things the way that they are, but you need to see them the way that they are. People who are self-aware are also very aware of their own capacity for self-deception and wrong thinking. Okay, beware the person who always thinks they're right, or the person who thinks everything they do is right, or the person who thinks that they can't fail, or that they can't ever make a mistake, or that everybody else is wrong and they're right. No, we all have to be very aware that, hey, I could be prone to self-deception. Very much so. I could be prone to wrong thinking. And if I'm not open to that possibility, nobody wants to be around somebody like that.
And just a quick book on that is called Leadership and Self-Deception. Leadership and Self-Deception. Read that. It is super powerful. And in that book, it actually says exactly what Kathy says. Most leaders have a higher view of themselves than they really should. Yeah.
Should have. Okay, people who are self-aware don't make everything about themselves, right? The world doesn't revolve around them. And I think we all have to realize that. We all tend to, I wouldn't say we all, but sometimes we can tend to think that we are the center of the universe and everybody's kind of rotating and revolving around us, kind of there to serve us and serve our needs. Well, that's wrong. Everybody is themselves, and we are all operating together in this world and in this life. People with good self-awareness and good emotional maturity, they give up expecting perfection from themselves and from other people. Because when perfection is your goal, when perfection is the standard, the result is always going to be disappointment, because you can't do that. You can't, or you'll burn yourself out completely trying to do that. It's no longer operating out of imposter syndrome. Okay, so imposter syndrome is thinking, I'm never good enough, right? I can't be good enough. They're going to find me out. They're going to realize that I'm not really all that in a bag of chips. So you see, it's kind of two sides of the same coin. It's thinking you're better than you really are, but it's also thinking you're worse than you really are. No, when you define reality, this is who I am. And it is what it is. And it's fabulous. And maybe I'm growing, or maybe I'm working on this, but this is who I am. And to know who you are and to be self-aware, you have to start learning, what are my likes? What are the things that I really like? What are the things that I really don't like? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What is my personality like? What are the things that bring me joy? What are the things that just drive me nuts? Right? It's discovering, who am I? Rather than, like Noble said, trying to become what somebody else thinks you should be, or what somebody else wants to define, how they want to define you. No, it's you learning that about you. It's being comfortable in your own skin. People who are emotionally mature are very easy to be around, because you don't feel like you're having to live up to anything. The freer you get in who you are, the more freedom you give everybody else to be exactly who they are as well. And, as a business owner, emotionally mature people are able to see how they come across to people. They're able to be aware of, man, I'm just kind of turning everybody off, or actually I can use this strength to help people, right? However that looks, it's just being aware of that. Emotionally mature people can lead themselves. Here's kind of number 2. They can lead themselves. So they're good at, well, I guess how we would say it is ask first and speak second. So it's the ability to have self-control over how they respond. It's the ability to not jump to a conclusion before they have all the information. They're willing to say, well, maybe there's more to this story, or let me dig in a little bit deeper before just immediately deciding they know the answer, they know what's going on, or they know what somebody else is thinking or feeling. It's really just stopping and saying, maybe I don't know everything. Let me ask some questions before I react to this. They can admit when they're wrong, and they can admit that they don't know everything. And they don't try to show confidence by wearing masks. A lot of times, some of the people that we look at and think, oh, they're so bold, they're so confident. Well, what we're seeing is we're seeing a mask that they're wearing because they actually have no confidence. They're operating out of imposter syndrome. And so they have to put on this mask because they think that's what they need to do, and because they think that's how they need to present themselves. And so when you truly are emotionally healthy, you don't have to wear any masks because you are okay with who you are and because you're working on that. Like Noble said, developing your own vision for your life and not living off the expectations of other people. And it's also not putting expectations on other people, right? It's not especially uncommunicated expectations, right? There is nothing worse. The source of most frustration and disappointment is because we have put an expectation on somebody else that we didn't communicate and that they didn't agree to. But we just had that in our head. We just thought that this is how they should act, or we thought that this is how they should treat us, or that this was what should happen in this certain circumstance. But if we didn't tell the person, and if they didn't agree to that, then we have no business having that expectation. And letting go of those expectations of other people is one of the surest ways to get whole lot happier in your life and to get out of the control seat in somebody else's life. So people who are emotionally mature, they don't beat themselves up for being human. They don't beat themselves up for having human emotions. They don't think there's something wrong with them just because maybe they feel anxiety one day or they feel some disappointment, right? They don't have this expectation that they should be on a continual high in their life all the time. No, the human experience is going to go up and down, and that's very normal. And to try to deny part of that because you think it's wrong or you think you shouldn't is denying your humanity, and that just doesn't make sense. People who are emotionally mature are able to live in the present, and they're able to see the present as a gift. We mess ourselves up when we live too much in the past. Maybe we live in the past thinking about, well, these are all the things that I've accomplished, right? Reliving the glory days, or even carrying the past with us, like Noble said, the 800-pound gorilla. Or we can live too much in the future, and we can put so much of our present life on hold because we're thinking, well, someday when this happens, or when we achieve this goal, or when we hit this place in business, then we'll be happy, then we'll spend time with our kids, then we'll travel, then we'll whatever, right? And so it's like this issue of not truly living in the present and seeing, no, right now is a gift. Right now, what we have, where we're at, our family, this is a gift, and being thankful and enjoying that rather than just pushing all of our happiness and joy to someday into the future. And that's just not healthy. Emotionally mature people take responsibility for their emotions and feelings. They don't expect somebody else to make them feel a certain way, right? It's not Noble's job to make me feel happy. It's not Noble's job to make me feel secure in my life. It's not his job to make me feel anything. Now, yes, we're married, so we do have certain things that we want to give to the relationship because we love and care for each other, but we take responsibility for our feelings. So if I'm feeling some kind of way, I can't expect him to fix that for me. I need to fix that for me. And sometimes what that looks like is that looks like asking for help, right? Sometimes that looks like, hey, I just need to go deal with myself with this. It's going to look different ways. But when we take responsibility for it, we get our power back. If we're constantly giving that to somebody else, now all we end up is angry at them, and we still feel the same way. And they're probably angry because you're expecting them to do something that's not their job to do either. So taking responsibility for our own emotions and feelings and how we feel. And as business owners, it's really important that we be able to ride the emotional roller coaster. Realize this, when you become an entrepreneur, it's like you are getting into a roller coaster of emotions and feelings that every business owner rides on, right? Some days, yes, this is awesome. And some days you feel like, what am I doing? I'm failing. This is terrible. I hate this, right? Like, it's normal. It's normal. But when you have emotional maturity, you're able to take that ride and not let it affect your momentum, right? And not let it take you down, not let it be the thing that makes you quit, right? None of those things. You're just able to let it be what it is and let the ride be what it is. All right, number 3 is emotionally healthy, emotionally mature people are able to put themselves in other people's shoes and practice empathy, right? They're able to see other people for who they are, to feel other people for where they're at without letting it engulf them and without the desire to try to change that person or without the desire to try to fix that person. Because whose job is it to fix us? It's my job to fix me. It's not his job to fix me, right? It's my job to fix me. So emotional maturity says we need to be comfortable with other people being exactly who they are, right? Exactly where they're at in their journey, where they're at in their growth, and not try to control or manipulate them into being something else. Now, do we want to create an environment where people can grow? Yes, 100%. We want to create an environment where people can grow, but we don't want to pressure people to grow and change at a pace or in a way that they're not ready to yet. That's their decision, and they get to do that. It's being willing to ask for and seek help from other people, right? It's dangerous territory when you expect somebody else to be able to read your mind. That is dangerous territory, because what happens, guess what? Can they read your mind? No. So inevitably they fail and you're mad, right? So how's that cycle working? So realizing that other people can't read your mind, and if you need help or if you need something from somebody, you have to ask and you have to be willing to say it. Emotional maturity is being able to recognize and celebrate the strengths of the people around you and not being intimidated or threatened by it. It's realizing that, guess what? This other person has amazing gifts and they have amazing things that they bring. And so let's celebrate that. Just because we're celebrating their gifts doesn't make mine any less special, right? But you have to be secure. You have to have a certain amount of security to be able to do that. It's being able to clearly communicate expectations. I talked about that just a little bit ago. Not having expectations and then just feeling mad and disappointed, right? And as a business owner, it's being able to understand your clients, being able to understand your partners and their wants and their needs and their feelings, and to be able to connect with them without being controlling and manipulative. It's being able to connect with them in a way that's genuine and that's authentic, that shows that you care, that shows you respect them as a person, and they're going to feel that. And then guess what? You give them the freedom to make the choices that are best for them. And that's a beautiful place to be. People want freedom, right? And we have to be careful about defining freedom so narrowly. We have to be careful at saying, no, freedom looks like this, right? Freedom can only look like this. And so therefore, I'm going to control you so you get this freedom. Like, how does that work? Like, that doesn't work, right? That doesn't work. So I just feel like when we operate in our own freedoms, we show other people what that looks like, and we give them the permission, we give them the vision of how to do that. Now, here's the good news. If you're like, man, I've got a long ways to go, I don't know that I'm super emotionally mature, the good news is you can learn this. You can learn this. And the real news is you must learn this. If you want to be an effective leader, an effective entrepreneur, you've got to learn this. The studies show that the majority, I want to say it's like 56, 59, something like that, close to 60% of our success is from our emotional intelligence, not from our skills, right? Not from the skills that we learn. Like we can learn networking skills, we can learn marketing skills and sales and all these things. And that's where most people focus all their time. But guess what? The majority of your true success comes from emotional intelligence. And that's why this is so important. So important.
You guys rock. I pray that some of this skinny was helpful for you all. Guys, we're such big fans and absolutely love Team Mac so much. Please, everyone, give Dom and Karina and the whole Mac family a big giant hug for us. Love you guys.